All right, guys. Cool. Thanks for getting together. I thought we would. We were all at Dreamforce last week, and you guys were all at the booth, at the Atlassian booth, and I thought we would sort of recap what we learned, what you guys heard from from people who visited about Atlassian products and Salesforce and connecting them together. What do you think about that? I think that'd be a good use of time.
Think so?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It was a much broader audience this year than last year.
Really? How so?
So I think that there were a lot more people who knew who Atlassian were this year, and a lot more who were wanting to understand why they should link the Atlassian products with Salesforce. What were the use cases? And there were quite a wide variety of use cases. It wasn't as if there was one particular reason. So I think it was a good use of time.
So what was the most common type of question you were getting?
So I'll pass that one across to Jesse because he's probably
Sure.
got the most experience there.
Sure. So we were really there talking about two specific tracks or two different sides of the Salesforce application. So Atlassian, of course, provides development tools for all your development needs. And so one of the main tracks we're really talking about are those people that were Salesforce developers and the tools that they were actually using to do Salesforce development. And that's where the Atlassian suite really comes in, brings a lot to the table, and brings a lot of value. Because with the Atlassian suite, and you're a Salesforce developer, you can do everything from tracking your development tasks in JIRA to version controlling your actual Salesforce development code, meaning your metadata, your XML, everything that you'd actually be using to develop on the Salesforce platform, develop your packages, anything, or even just manage your customizations to your Salesforce instance, and version control all of that, and really to complete this loop in your development cycle and really to bring value to developers, pairing that with Bamboo, or continuous integration server. And that would really allow you to continuously test and deploy and manage your environments and really speed up your whole development cycle. So for one side of it, we were talking about people that were developing on the Salesforce platform using Atlassian tools to speed up and really aid that development process. On the other side of it, so that's pretty much focused on kind of the underlines of Salesforce. On the other side of it, we were there promoting and talking about our connectors into the Salesforce platform. And these connectors really focus on the users and use cases of those that are using the applications. And so Salesforce JIRA connector focused in on sharing information across JIRA and Salesforce Confluence, again, sharing information between Salesforce and Confluence.
Yeah. So if I'm a developer building an app on the Salesforce platform, I guess it's, so, I mean, what do I care about connecting my JIRA to Salesforce? I mean, I'm just developing an app. What do I care? What's in it for me?
Well, if you're developing an app on the Salesforce platform, the connector might not necessarily be the first thing that you really come to. And that's, again, where that first track really came into play. And that's those first set of users when they're probably not the administrator. They're not the one that's actually the business user that's actually trying to solve a problem with, bringing visibility across the organization. That first group of users is really just about as a developer, how do I speed up my Salesforce development? So that's kind of where that first set of users, that user that you're referring to.
I see.
But where it does come to the fore is that, those, Salesforce developers, a lot of their requirements are actually coming through the people who are out in the field. And in many instances, they only live in Salesforce. So, they don't touch JIRA, they don't want to touch JIRA, but they do want to make sure that their requirements are getting satisfied. So for one example that we had was that, there's a user base out there that those salespeople or customer service people, et cetera, are satisfying, and they have requirements to do estimates, et cetera. And so one of the use cases we heard was, look, I don't come into the office that often. I live in Salesforce, but I would really like people to live in the JIRA world to actually do work for me. So it might be to do an estimate or fix a bug, etc. And so by being able to link Salesforce and JIRA in particular, they can raise something in Salesforce that will automatically create a task for someone living in the JIRA world who will do whatever is required to satisfy that task or issue, if you like to call it that. And as that's being updated, it gets passed back to Salesforce. So in many cases, even without leaving their car, there's a communication channel between the front office and the back office, if you like to call it that. So, there's some significant benefit to that in the development world.
It sounds like it translates to a customer support agent working in Service Cloud. At least, do they have access to information they need to answer customer questions? Customers may call in and complain, and what's the problem I'm having, and no one's fixing the report or something, and would they have more visibility? Is that what's going on here too?
More visibility, but the typical use case we really think of for a lot of people is they're running their help desk or perhaps their front end help desk out of Salesforce, and Salesforce really does great about building a community around your product, building a community around your software, and that also typically is where a lot of in a lot of cases and requests get filed. But that is fairly limiting because that's not where your developers are. And for a bug to actually make its way all the way down to your developers in JIRA, most of the time it's without a connector. It's copying and pasting between the two systems.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does. So with the connector, it's really creating that communication, making that communication, just bridging that communication between the two teams that might exist in different silos. So in this case, it's allowing that issue, that case that's in Salesforce to be pushed down to your developers in JIRA. Your JIRA developers then work on it, communicate back for any other information they need back into Salesforce, and that communication, just that loop, is then open, and that communication is open between the two different teams. So it really does help up and speed up resolution times.
Isn't that a huge time saver?
Oh,
I mean, issues come in through support, I suppose, right? And they're entered as cases, and the support team isn't using JIRA, so it just passes through, right?
Correct. And we've seen, I don't have exact numbers, I'd be making them up, but we've seen people really come back to us and say, look, this saved me a huge lump of time, because what I was doing previously is I was copying and pasting. And it's pretty amazing what people do just to make sure that their communication exists and it's there. They copy updates from one system, push them in another. They copy comments across, just copy and pasting them across the two systems. And this connector just
awful.
Yeah, it really just solves all those problems.
One example of one of the people I spoke to at the conference was that his support people live in Salesforce and his developers live in the JIRA world. And each month he would go around and give his developers a hard time because they hadn't closed cases. But when he actually dug into it, they had closed the cases, but they'd closed them in JIRA and had either had the time or the inclination to go back and close them in Salesforce. So one side of the ledger said you're doing a really bad job. The other side said you're doing a really great job. And so he runs a report every week to show me which cases are open in JIRA, so I can then go back manually and check them in Salesforce to make sure that they're the only ones that are open. So, just by being able to sync that this issue is now closed in JIRA, it's now closed in Salesforce at the same time, would save him an enormous amount of time every week.
That's a cool report.
Yeah.
So,
it's also
don't
about
tell
accuracy.
Because it's closed in both places.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So don't tell Benioff, but I guess those guys don't need Salesforce licenses to close cases anymore. Is that it?
Yeah. That's the great thing about it is, like you said, sometimes you have a team that only lives in one silo or the rest, but the connector really allows for that communication across the two teams without having to waste licenses, as you might say.
Yeah, that's cool. So what other things were you hearing from people at the booth?
So one thing that was quite interesting as well is with the Salesforce Confluence connector. And this has a great application because, like I said, it really expands the scope of just making the information you have in Salesforce visible. A typical use case we see a lot of people come across is, you have Salesforce and you have tons of information stored there, your sales information, your cases information, just, a wealth of information actually stored there. But most of the time, your entire organization is not in Salesforce. It doesn't see everything that's happening there. And so a lot of times you have that visibility to your sales team, to your marketing team, to all sorts of teams, just limited because they don't have access. Whereas most people that have Confluence implemented as an internal intranet inside of their organization, that's where the free-for-all, that everyone has access, everyone's collaborating there, and that's the collaboration ground. So if you ever wanted to collaborate around content or information that you have stored in Salesforce, you again are with the cycle of copying it out of Salesforce, pasting it in Confluence, having a conversation. And should any of that information change, it's out of date immediately. And it's a really, really, it's closed off and you can't really see what's going on. Whereas if you were able to communicate connect the two systems, where you could have live and dynamic updates of your information that's happening in the Salesforce, have them live updated into a Confluence page where you could then have a further conversation around them, prescribe action items to a broader audience, all sorts of collaboration elements. If you could do that, you'd bring a lot of value to your team and bring a lot more people into the conversation and bring a lot more ideas and just really, really help in a lot of ways. So that's one thing that we really heard a lot of, and that's where a Salesforce Confluence connector really solves a big problem that a lot of customers are seeing there by really allowing that visibility between the two systems.
Yeah, I dig that. So it sounds like I could put dashboards from Salesforce right into Confluence pages, and then everyone in my intranet could see reports and dashboards and those pie charts and everything, right?
Exactly. And imagine if you had that pie chart or that short list up at the top, and then you wanted to have comments below it and say, well, maybe I'm running a list of all opportunities that have been closed this month, and we want to have a conversation around that and say, look, we're down this month. What can we do to bring it up? Or, assign JIRA issues, quite honestly, off of that report and then communicate back into JIRA for action items. I mean, that collaboration environment just really spawns a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, that's cool.
And the other conversation that we were hearing is that, there's a lot of people see some challenges on the Salesforce side in that it's not really the greatest place for documentation to live. And so they were really looking for Confluence to be that documentation hub, but then to take that data that exists there and is, collaborative there, and then move it into the Salesforce world. So that was clearly a future requirement for the connector, was to be able to pull information out of Confluence and push it into Salesforce to, give that rich data source that exists outside Salesforce and pull it into Salesforce.
So how's that coming along, Jesse?
It's coming along well. No, it
no
is.
Pressure.
And the concept is what Ray mentioned. Salesforce, and again, Salesforce lets you build a really, really large community and a really far-reaching community. And that's the beautiful thing of the Salesforce platform, is it just can give you an amazingly far reach inside of your customers, whoever's interested in your software. But there are some challenges with managing knowledge base articles and documentation inside of the Salesforce platform. And the editing experience isn't necessarily that great. And a lot of people really wanted to use the editing experience of Confluence and even just pre-existing content that they have stored in Confluence, and be able to use that and repurpose it and use it as their knowledge base articles that are public facing. When you're building a knowledge base, or when you're building, documentation on your product, you really want one source of truth. You want one place that is kind of up to date, because anytime a new version comes out or screenshots change, on your software, you want to know that there's kind of one place you can go to and be sure that once it's updated there, it should populate out to all the far-reaching corners of the world. And so that's kind of the idea of using Confluence as your central hub, and then populating that out to your Salesforce knowledge base articles and things like that, but knowing that it's all co-located in one environment that you can manage easily. And that's another really big feature that we're working on now. So,
that's cool. Okay, so tell me some of the stories you were telling the people that came to the booth. So they wanted examples, and you probably told some stories about some customers and what kinds of things they were doing. Could you share one or two of those? Either one of you.
Ray, you want to start off?
Okay,
you guys must have been doing tons of these over and over and over again for 4 days.
Yeah, about 800 people.
Yeah.
So one of the stories that I, as I say, very much focused around the salespeople, in that, they create opportunities and they want to make sure that they get a timely estimate put together for a customer. So they would create an opportunity, create a JIRA issue for someone to do the estimate. As soon as the estimate was done, it's passed back to Salesforce. So that meant that the salesperson had, overall visibility of where is my estimate, who's working on it, how quickly are they working on it, when can I expect it to be delivered, and so that way they can keep their customer informed. And in many cases doing that via an iPhone or a Samsung phone or whatever. So the ability to be able to do that while you're out in the field was very valuable to them.
Yeah. What about you, Jesse? What was your go-to story?
Well, the story that I often led with, and it seemed to hit home to a lot of people, is again using Salesforce as their support platform and using cases in there, and then having JIRA as your development environment and having your developers in there, the disconnect between the two of them. And remarkably, that hit home and really, really resonated with a lot of people. And that was a quick kind of, quick realization of, what if I could shorten that time, or what if I could communicate between the two systems? What value would it really bring to my team? And that really hit home with a lot of people. And then further exploring that and saying, as Ray said, what if I was managing a task or something or an actions out of JIRA, since it's a great, task management system, and I needed information on an account, a contact, something stored in Salesforce. How do I bring that information together? And that was another story that we really told a lot of, and that resonated with a lot of people. So that was two stories on the JIRA side, and of course on the Confluence side, I kind of reiterated, bringing sales and collaboration together, and that really resonated with a lot of people.
Oh yeah, to me the best to me is the dashboards and reporting data on Confluence pages, from Salesforce. Yeah. I mean, to me to be able to publish that to everyone, talk about a company that says they're transparent and they can actually show it instead of acting like it and just forgetting to send out the reports.
Yeah.
Not everyone can get a Salesforce license. You wouldn't get it for your whole company, right?
Yeah. And so something that also came up a lot, and interestingly, it was a lot of situations that people that came and talked to us would be something like there's a consulting organization, or they commonly work on projects with other teams or other companies. And what that means is that you have a lot of information on that particular partner or company stored in Salesforce, and you want to have one dashboard that you can kind of co-locate everything that's you're working on for that customer, the opportunities, the cases, everything. And then you might also be using JIRA to kind of track your progress or track issues that you're working on with this team as well. And you kind of want one place to co-locate all your information from Salesforce, all your information from JIRA, and then a collaboration environment for storing documentation, all inside of one place. And that's where bringing all this information together into one Confluence dashboard becomes just really, really powerful capability.
Yeah, it's very cool. Wait, I saw pictures of Benioff by the Atlassian booth. Are these tales true, or are they just tall tales?
They are true tales. He stopped by, yeah. Ray, were you there when he stopped by?
I was there. I took the photo.
Oh.
Oh, you took the photo.
I tried to muscle my way through the 6 guards, but they wouldn't let me.
No, you couldn't sell him a connector? You told him to download the trial on his phone.
Yeah, I should have. But it was interesting that he took the time to walk around the floor and look at the booths, etc. But yeah, and we had some interesting discussion. Some wild-eyed ideas about what the connectors could do. So there's some research for us to go away. Well, one of the companies wanted to keep track of what versions of all of my customers using, and so that when the phone call came through, they would know that this particular customer is on this release of our product and that customer's on a different one. So, again, being able to link some of that stuff through from the back end system to the front end. So, there's some challenges we've got to think about how would you model that to make it work.
Yep. It seems like Salesforce is making a much bigger push to get developers involved. I mean, to have this developer zone dedicated to this, and they had a lot of programming for, build apps, build apps, build apps, build apps. I assume then in the DevZone, most of the people coming to you were developers of some kind, or is that not true?
I would say that resonated with a lot of the people that came up to the booth. A decent amount of them were Salesforce developers, or they had or running a Salesforce development team, or had some connection to Salesforce development. I mean, where we were was developer focused, and so that was the typical position of a lot of people that came up. And that was pretty common.
Yeah, but we did have we had a few CIOs, we had a VP of strategy, so it wasn't just the development world, and a lot of it was coming. Why would I connect the Atlassian products with JIRA and with Salesforce? And so, there was a meaningful conversation about here's all the things you could do. Are they a problem in your organization? And quite frequently you'd get the head nodding and saying, well, yeah, I have got that problem, but we solve it by cutting and pasting or by jumping up and down on people who don't do the right thing.
Email.
But, the fact that they could automate it is, something they hadn't even considered they could do. Or the worst thing was, we're going to write it ourselves. And then, well, how far down the track are you? Well, we're thinking about it. And so have you done an estimate of how long that'll take? And, it's a month's work or something. And they say, well, yeah, but 85% of the cost of an application is not building it the first time, it's actually maintaining it. So have you factored that into the business case? And you could buy it now and be running tomorrow. And that's an eye-opener to them. The challenge with a lot of engineering organizations is they always think they can build a better mousetrap. And the CIO isn't necessarily interested in that. He just wants a result now.
Very cool. So you got cut off. I started yapping, Ray.
Yeah.
So you came back in on me when you were talking about the CIO just wants results.
Yeah, he just wants results. He doesn't care if he's got the best engineering team in the world. He just wants the best result for his company. Yeah. And if that means buying the ServiceRocket products, then that's maybe the best outcome for him.
Well, sounds like this product is plugging up some leaky holes between these two. I mean, these two products are really becoming popular, with two different audiences, right? So there must be a way. They got to figure out a way to connect it. Thank goodness for us, right?
Well, yeah. I think that it's actually a much broader audience than many people consider. So the Atlassian products are now not just development tools or being used by developers. They're being used by business organizations. So, managing marketing campaigns, which you might drive through Salesforce, but you want to manage them through some JIRA workflow or, managing an accounting relationship. Are the invoices paid? So tracking that through a workflow, etc. So it's not just limited to I've got a development team that I want to integrate with Salesforce. It's what does my business need to integrate to Salesforce, and where do they live?
Oh yeah, very true. Okay, so you guys you guys want to make some Dreamforce, and maybe one of
Bill, can you try that again, or having trouble hearing you?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Looks like we lost Bill.
Well,
go check out
We did
more
so
information
well.
connectors.
our moderator is gone. What do we do?
Guess we take over. Well,
Yeah.
It was nice talking to you, Jesse, today. That was very informative, and I'm pleased that we had the chance to connect. I really enjoyed the 4 days we spent together standing on our feet.
Yeah.
Oh, they lost me.
Oh, Bill, you back?
You guys, am I here? Am I back?
You're back.
All right, so I walked into the kitchen to get back. So, I heard you guys
Yep.
the whole time wrapping it up. So,
Oh, no. Back
He's
again.
gone again.
all right. Bye, everybody. Let's sign off. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear. Thanks for
All right.
moderating.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, man.
See you, Bill.
Yeah. See you guys later. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers.